Hey everyone, and welcome to today's event. My name is Apostolos Kivalas, and I'm a PhD candidate at the Faculty of Law here at UiT, the Arctic University of Norway. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the fourth seminar of our recurring series in response to what is going on currently in Palestine. I would like to mention that although this event is taking place at UiT, is not organized by the university, but is rather organized in response to the university and the overall society's silence towards what is happening currently in Gaza. It is the fourth seminar of this series, as I've mentioned. It is mainly driven by students and employees here at UiT, and it has the vast support of several initiatives in town, such as the Palestina Committee in Tromsø, Tromsø for Palestina Group, the initiative The Art of Being Anti-Racist, which is also organized a seminar this evening in the library at 6, and the students, 5, I'm sorry, and the Students for Justice in Palestine movement. So it is one among the many initiatives currently undergoing in Atu UITE, including the Working Out group, the group working on the exchange of letters with the rectorship of the university, the group disseminating information on the info desk, which you can find currently over there, and the boycott, divestment, and sanctions BDS movement, among others. So should you be interested in joining us, or if you have not reached out so far, feel free to talk to us after the event, or it's via email, or visit the info desk to get informed. I would like also to mention that this event is part of the entire week of events occurring here in Tromsø, commemorating the 76 years of Nakba, with a full week of solidarity events in campus, in town, in library, including both academic information stands and but also cultural events and different festivities. So today's topic will be the pro-Israel bias in the coverage of war in Palestine by international and Nordic media. And as you all probably know, bias in media have a profound impact of our perception of the world, the way we reach information, we react to what is going out in society, and we need to critically interrogate what we actually consume through the media and how we receive information from mainstream media. Unfortunately, in the ongoing situation in Gaza and Palestine, the mainstream media are communicating a very pro-Israeli narrative, and in that regard, we decided to organize today's seminars with expert Osama Al-Habahbeh, who is a journalist and the chairman of the Foreign Press Association in Denmark. Osama is a former Nordic correspondent for Al Jazeera and current correspondent for Jordan News Agency. He has also his own independent platform called the Arab Scandinavian Pen. Before giving the floor to Osama, I would like to mention that this event is recorded. So if you don't want your voice to be recorded for people in the room or online, just reach out with the questions straight to the chat, where Pauline will be in contact. So we are starting with a presentation, approximately half an hour, and then we're going to take a Q&A and discussion session afterwards. So Osama, the floor is yours, and we look forward to your presentation.
Can you hear me? Good. I would like to thank you, Abo, for the introduction of me. And by starting this, I would like to add a funny story about me and my name. As you can hear and see, my name is Osama. And many of you remember the name of the person who was the most wanted international terrorist more than 20 years ago, after 9/11, 2001 in New York, Osama bin Laden, who was accused of planning for this attack on World Trade Center in New York. I can see that some of you were not even born in 2001, but nevertheless, Osama bin Laden became the famous international known name because the TV station Al Jazeera was the first TV station to make interview with Osama bin Laden and introduce him globally. At that time, I was the correspondent of Al Jazeera based in Denmark. When I needed to make interview with Danish politicians or others, I used to phone them and introduce myself, Osama from Al Jazeera. I could hear the silence on the other side. And the thinking, is this a joke? Osama from Al Jazeera? Well, now I know that I have an international name. I don't need to spell my name when I call public or private offices. Before 9/11, Danish people used to pronounce my name as Usama or Usaima. Now they know how to spell and pronounce my name in Denmark. At that time, actually, I was thinking of sending a letter, thank you letter, to Osama bin Laden, to thank him that he at last managed to learn Danish people how to spell and pronounce my name. But nevertheless, today it's not Osama from Al Jazeera that is accused of being terrorist. It is the TV station itself. Al Jazeera TV is being accused of being terrorist TV channel, a TV channel that is supporting terrorists during the war in Gaza. And I have to manage this. Yes. As you can see, after being accused of being terrorist TV channel, that is what you can see in Israel now. There is no Al Jazeera coverage inside Israel. Well, as you can hear, that Al Jazeera was accused of being a terrorist TV channel. Israeli government decided less than 10 days ago to close Al Jazeera channel in Israel. Well, the decision, as she was mentioning also, follows a law commonly referred to as Al Jazeera law, passed in April by the Knesset, the Israeli Knesset, to allow the closure of foreign broadcasters considered to pose a security threat during the Israeli war in Gaza. But I mean, when you come here, so you ask yourself a question, is this targeting the truth or Al Jazeera TV and its journalists on the ground in Palestine, or both? And by the way, I have to mention that Norway criticized Israel's decision to forbid Al Jazeera. And I have a quote here. The world community is completely dependent on the media for credible information about the situation. Banning a news outlet like Al Jazeera is a direct attack on press freedom. That was the quote. And that was Norway's foreign minister, Espen Barth Eide, told the Norwegian TV2 on May the 6th in response to Israel's decision to close the Israeli branch of the news channel Al Jazeera. So now you can say, if you count from October the 7th until today, it's 20 days are gone since the last war against Palestine started. I have to mention that the war started actually 76 years ago when the State of Israel were established in Palestine in 1948. The war, which is called the Palestinian Nakba catastrophe, the 15th of May, 1948. So the day after tomorrow, we will be commemorating the ethnic cleansing of 750,000 Palestinians, around 3/4 of the Palestinian population at that time, from their homeland in 48, and then the following denial of their right to return. So back to the media. when you look at what's happening with the media and journalists in Gaza and Palestine, never before have so many journalists been killed in such a short time. Not even in the two world wars. Not during the war in Vietnam, Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Not even in Ukraine. So where is... Yes. Well, as you can see here, I mean, the 1st of May, Israel had killed 140 journalists in Gaza and around, 69 during the World War II, 63 in Vietnam, 17 in the Korean War, and 17 in the Russian-Ukraine War. So when you look at this, actually one of the most famous Al Jazeera killed journalists was my previous colleague, Shireen Abu Akleh, killed by Israeli snipers 2 years ago, in May 11th, 2022, in the Palestinian city of Jenin. And by killing 140 journalists until now, no international journalist is allowed into Gaza to report from the war field. And as no international journalist is allowed in Gaza, the international media depends on journalists reporting from inside Israel about what's happening in Gaza. And here I have a quote also. The Israeli army pronounces, the IDF says, that's a quote. With these words, Western So with these words, actually Western, including Nordic journalists, begin or end their TV reporting on the ongoing Israel-Palestine war. Since the beginning of the latest Israeli-Palestine war in Gaza and during the last 7 months, it seems that the protocol on journalistic ethics that Western journalists love to preach about had been heading far away. The absence of ethics goes far beyond what might be called professional error or even bias. Western journalists faithfully follow the Israeli narrative and are busy covering breaking news as spokesmen for the occupying army. And in a new embedded journalism, the involvement of Western media in the current war in Gaza can be considered as a new type of embedded journalism. That is, a media genre in which journalists accompany a military unit under conditions decided by the military unit. This actually results in war coverage that is difficult to distinguish from military declarations. This type of journalism emerged as an American tradition during the Gulf War in 1991. It is actually described by the French thinker Jean Baudrillard as the first war in history in which victories are declared on television before they are achieved on earth. And as a result of the success of this genre, United States and Europe became more aware of the need to use the media in war. So as international journalists travels to Israeli settlement around Gaza, together with the Israeli soldiers or settlers, broadcasting reports whose only source is Israeli soldier or settler, which we follow in Scandinavian media. So no Norwegian journalists report from inside Gaza, but send their reports from Tel Aviv or other Israeli cities or settlements. And the most famous example of those soldier-journalist partnership trip is the story about Hamas beheading Israeli babies. This is the story which was covered in the entire Western media. And it is, oh, I have to, it will not be. So as you could see that this story of finding Hamas beheading Israeli babies, that story actually spread like wildfire in the Western media. And not only in the Western media, all the way to the US President Joe Biden, who himself on October the 11th said the following. So even the president of the US confirmed the story that he saw pictures of the beheaded Israeli children. That's what he said here. And when you look at that, actually, the day after, October the 12th, Israeli officials denied that babies were beheaded. And the White House said that the US president did not see pictures of beheaded babies, but relied on an Israeli information coming from the office of Netanyahu in Tel Aviv. So the story of beheaded babies were taken down from the media outlets in the US. At the same time, no Western media had been reporting about thousands of Palestinian babies killed by Israeli until now. And the Palestinian death toll now stands at 35,000 killed. Number of children who were killed is around 15,000 and 10,000 women. As a result of the ongoing war, some 17,000 children in Gaza had lost one or both parents. Meanwhile, in the occupied West Bank, the death toll is around, due to the terror of Israeli settlers and army against Palestinians, resulted in 500 killed Palestinians, including more than 100 children under the age of 18. But the echo of the fake story about Hamas beheading Israeli babies kept going in the Western media. We can see here the Danish Broadcasting Corporation, DR. It's like the equivalent, like NRK. On November the 3rd, 3 weeks after documenting that the story of beheaded Israeli babies is a fake story. The Danish broadcast correspondent in Tel Aviv, the one you see here, kept talking about the beheaded Israeli babies. And another TV station has a correspondent sitting also in Tel Aviv, and he's defending that he is covering the war objectively. But he apparently did not hear about the withdrawal of this story as fake news. He kept on referring to this story. And the TV host back in Copenhagen approved the statement about the beheading babies and has not corrected or dismissed the story as fake news, which the whole world had been informed 3 weeks earlier, except Danish press. That's Danish press. When talking about the media in Norway, I have the following example. We can see that human rights organization in Norway, like Human Rights Services, HRS, is actually defending Israel war in Gaza and describing Israel war as a Norwegian struggle to defend the Norwegian culture and civilization. Rita Carlson, who is the leader and the editor of HRS, and she is here describing the media coverage of Israel war in Gaza in the Norwegian media, mainstream media. She accuses mainstream media of being not critical, but actually pro-Palestinian. Rita Carlson writes about the Israeli attack in hospital in Gaza at Shifa Hospital and says that Hamas has a command center under the hospital. Israeli army launched a targeted operation against a Shifa hospital, an operation that the doctor and the activist and mainstream media widely used voice, Mass Gilbert, refers to as medical racism. So Rita Carlson is not only attacking the mainstream media, but also anyone in Norway who is expressing views contrary to the Israeli narrative and accusing of Mass Gilbert for not struggling enough to defend the Norwegian culture and civilization. So considering the coverage of bombing everything in Gaza, civilians, hospitals, schools, and UN buildings were not quite to Israel's liking. Its top official joined Rita Carlson and came out to lecture the media on how to do their job. And the clearest voice to express the role of the Western media is former Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid, who in October 19th said the followings. Yes, as you could see, what he is saying actually, yeah. I have to stop this, yeah. Sorry, I just want to. Well, that's what he's saying. I mean, if the international media is objective, it serves Hamas. And if it shows both sides, it serves Hamas. If there is any symmetry between sufferings, it serves Hamas. And he is very innocent and saying that I don't want you to tell you how to do your job, but it has to be changed radically, fundamentally. We will be helping you if you need any help. So that is the Israeli response to how media is covering, I mean, in the West, covering the war in Gaza. So the essence of coverage in Europe and other countries that pay tribute to Israel is determined by the identity and the ethnicity of the victim, not by the value of human lives. Here you can see the BBC. That's an example. In their coverage, I mean, of the war, the BBC uses the word died when referring to Palestinian victims in Gaza, and killed when it refers to Israeli victims. Coming back to Norway, similarly, Norwegian media use the word gisla, hostage, to refer to Israeli captives in Gaza. Hostage, for me, is a term when a criminal group is attacking a bank, taking hostages in the bank, robbing a bank, like, I mean, in Hollywood films. So they take hostages, gisla. That's Hollywood films. While in the same time, I mean, using the word fanga, and that is prisoners for Palestinians, captives in Israel. It is a part of any war to take prisoners of war, for example, also as in Hollywood film. And that's not criminal act, it's a part of the war. So Israelis are Gisla, but Palestinians are Fanga. Well, I mean, I would like almost to finish my contribution today, but with a fresh story from Oslo. As you can see here, Middle Israel for Fred is a Norwegian organization founded in 1978 from the turn of millennium until 2022, the organization membership has increased from around 1,000 to 12,000 members. Many of the members are influencers, journalists, and politicians. And it is the biggest pro-Israel lobby in Norway and is part of the campaign in Norway to support Israel and its policies. You can see that they had their conference finished yesterday in Oslo. And what is they are using? I mean, they are active in using the accusation of being anti-Semite against anyone in Norway who criticize Israel, and against, also at the same time, they are against demonstrations in Norway that demands ceasefire in Gaza or raise the Palestinian flag. So they finished actually yesterday the conference in Oslo by organizing a demonstration in Oslo Center using the same accusations of anti-Semitism if you criticize Israel. And here I would like to finish my last slide. Can I get it open? No, it can't. I will try to. Why can't I open this link? Okay. I will try again here. I don't know why. There is a link here, but I cannot open it. Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, I cannot play this interview. It's an British author and journalist who is calling that, I mean, killing of 140 Palestinian journalists in Gaza is actually racism in a way. It is racism in the Western media. And that's all. And with this, I would like to thank you very much for listening. I would like to finish my introduction about the international and Nordic media coverage of Israel war in Gaza. And I would welcome any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Osama, for this stimulating and thought-provoking presentation. We have a bit over half an hour for discussion or questions, comments. So please raise your hand or write your comments on the chat. We would like to prioritize questions for people in the room, but yeah, we can follow up with people online. So any reactions, hands? Aha, please.
Thank you so much. We've been seeing for months all this dangerous game of playing with the terms and the definitions and the facts about what's going on. Uh, but we also are seeing that so many journalists are still doing it, even after all this long time. Like, for example, Piers Morgan, he still every now and then put it in the context something about beheading babies and babies in the oven. And I'm wondering, in the world of journalism, how much accountability can we rely on? I understand now it's a bit crowded with everything going on, so they get away with still promoting such things. But would such journalists be held accountable at some point in the future? Like, does it come back to them, what they have said in their platforms? Are they able to lose some credibility for their audience, or it's not possible in a way?
I think, I mean, some of the Western media journalists are withdrawing now their previously adopting the Israeli narrative. And you can see that actually both in ERCO, here in Norway, and NTB. So, I mean, they are slowly withdrawing their stereotype attitude toward Palestinians and Palestinian journalists. So I think, I mean, also with what's going on the streets, I mean, people going out, demonstrations, and also I know from Denmark that demonstrations outside the TV station, the main TV station, had made that they started to make, because they have no journalists in Gaza, so they started to call Palestinian journalists inside Gaza and then make interviews with them. Nevertheless, they have been accused of being anti-Semite, both in Denmark and, as you could see here, Risa Carlsen attacking the Norwegian media of being not critical and pro-Palestinian. But it will continue. I mean, the movement or the public intifada, I would say, started in Columbia University, coming to Europe, to Denmark, to Norway. It will continue. And as they managed to stop Vietnam War at that time, I'm very hopeful that they will also manage to change the mind of decision makers in Washington and Europe for the best of humanity. For the journalists, I think, I mean, they start also putting question about their ethics, because that's what you learn in media high school. I mean, the ethics of journalism, and that's what I was. I was also a teacher. I was teaching journalists. That's the first thing you do. I mean, thinking about your ethics as journalists, how to be objective, how to be neutral. So they're starting to do that. They could see, I mean, they could see the Israeli previous prime minister saying, if you are objective, you're serving Hamas. So that's, I mean, who can say that to a journalist? Don't be objective, be subjective. Yeah, that.
Thank you. We have two more hands from the room.
Hello. Thank you for this seminar. And I see that it is so important, especially in this time, after what we see from propaganda that became unbearable and unbelievable, but they are still going on. But I maybe can understand that from UK. I can understand that even from Sweden, but from Norway. The only peace solution for the Palestinian case is called Oslo peace process. You are the one that hold on your shoulder the peace between these parties. How come not be objective? That's a question that we always ask and nobody answer, but what we should do to let them change in this one eye looking at what is happening, and also related to phrases. I see that it is not fair also to see to talk about it as a war against Gaza, because we see that Palestinian outside in the foreign countries are attacked, supporters are attacked, people in West Bank, but West Bank is part of Palestine for sure, is attacked. I think they reach 400-500 people murdered from 7 October until now. If we say that it is war against Gaza, we are omitting all of this, and that's not fair from my point. I hope that this point will be take care on media in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope so also. I mean, I hope that, as you said, the war is not on Gaza, the war is on Palestine, both West Bank, Gaza, and all over the place, and also on Palestinians outside Palestine. So I'm pretty hopeful that media is changing the attitude now, especially also in Norway. I know Norway has also a history of, is the country who facilitated the Oslo Accords and is a peaceful country. Will Norway still, comparing Norway with other Scandinavian countries, is one of the best countries to support or to be critical to Israel. And that doesn't mean that Norway should stop here. No, I think you should continue putting pressure on the media, mainstream media, and the decision makers to make more practical steps than just saying we support. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And I think your presentation and some of the questions that have been asked point out that there's different levels of journalism we can distinguish between us. Piers Morgan is the lowest of the low, as I think your headline was from the Daily Mail in the UK. And I think Bernie Sanders said it most brilliantly when he directed his words to Netanyahu and said, it is not anti-Semitic to hold you to account. But as regards the banning of journalism in Gaza and making Al Jazeera a terrorist organization, I wondered what you thought of what I call citizen journalism. Some of the most powerful accounts that I've seen coming out of Gaza have actually been from hospitals, often video diaries of Western doctors, some from Norway, some from the UK, some from different places, filming what's going on in the wards, what they're seeing, and this has been broadcast on the BBC, and it's incredibly powerful. So even though it's depressing to see all this counter propaganda coming that people are listening to and watching, I actually feel, like you pointed out, the actual ordinary citizen is making their voice heard. They're taking to the streets, and there is this sort of civilian journalism going on. I just wondered if you had any comments on that too.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Yeah.
Just so it's really depressing that organizations, official organizations, are being banned. But what do you think of the power of citizen journalism that we're seeing coming through with people on the ground there broadcasting their stories of being in hospitals in Gaza, for example?
Even if they, of course, they forbid Al Jazeera in Israel now, but we still have, journalists based in Gaza, and they are broadcasting from Gaza. Nevertheless, we have the social media, which is also a powerful media platform now, broadcasting from Gaza. So what's happening in Gaza is being covered in a way or another. The Israeli decision to forbid Al Jazeera in Israel is to prevent a new intifada in the West Bank. Because if West Bank starts intifadas or supporting Gaza in real matters, then it's a big issue, big problem for Israel. Because in West Bank, it's not ghetto. Here we have a Palestinian ghetto, and here we have a Jewish ghetto. They are mixed. The settlements, 800 settlers are inside West Bank. So if Palestinians in West Bank follow what's happening in Gaza via Al Jazeera, which they cannot now, which it might be, provoke them to do more attacks, more resistance. So that was one of the reasons to stop Al Jazeera in West Bank. Nevertheless, there are still attacks, daily attacks by settlers and soldiers in West Bank. And I think it's a matter of time before Palestinians in West Bank moves more dramatically than they are doing until now.
Thank you. I was going to ask a similar question, so I think I'll just skip that. One thing I was wondering is, it came out in Denmark some months ago that every time there is anything happening in Palestine and Israel, the major news outlets, they are contacted by the Israeli embassy and not instructed, but advised how to proceed with the media. And I can't remember who it was, but it was a former editor of one of the big news outlets. I don't understand why that was not major news story. You have a foreign embassy that is contacting and trying to dictate what major news outlets are, how they're reporting on a certain case. And this entity is directly like a perpetrator in it. Why isn't it more like, where is the critical journalists? Why aren't they questioning why there is such a strong bias? And especially since it's actually been proven that the embassy, the Israeli embassy, is interfering with news outlets. What do you think about that?
With the main media outlets in Denmark, perhaps also in Norway and in the West, is influenced, I would not say controlled, is influenced by the Zionist lobby, or the Jewish lobby, or the pro-Israeli lobby. And that's the same case in Denmark. So the director of DR or TV2 or other, they are in good manners with the donors, with the people who are supporting them and the people who are influencing them. And they are invited to the Israeli embassy to, as he said, that we would like to help you how to cover. I mean, the previous Israeli prime minister inviting the media how to cover the war in Israel. And then the Israeli embassy is inviting to show how Danish media should cover the war. And then, of course, they don't want to tell about that because it will expose them themselves. I mean, there are small medias in Denmark and here in Norway that writes about that. But those small medias are not supported, funded by the government as all other major media. I mean, I know that NRK and DR are supported by finance department in the parliament. So they get funding from government. So there's a red line, how far to go, how critical to be to the decision makers and their supporters.
Thank you. We have another hand from maybe I can appropriate my authority and follow up with a tiny question as well, linked to your point before. Something we haven't really talked, and I would like you to hear about, to reflect a bit, is the role of social media in the ongoing situation. And as I personally perceive it, much of the entire global solidarity movement of mobilization has been driven by social media, mainly by people residing in Gaza and how they have been broadcasting atrocities and what is going on there on an everyday basis. Do you see, how do you see the role of social media in the overall narrative, and whether they can be a tool of resistance against mainstream media?
Actually, the social media had proved to be the good answer of ethical journalism when it comes to compare it with the mainstream media. I know that there are so many other things going on in the social media that cannot be described as journalism or as ethical journalism. I mean, there are so many voices, but at least you get information out of nowhere. You get information out of Gaza, out of West Bank by social media. And then it gives the power to the people. And that's I mean, at the end of the day, that's the main goal of media, to give voice to the voiceless, voice to the people. And the mainstream media is not doing that, is not giving voice to the voiceless. It is the social media who's giving voice to the voiceless. So I do expect social media is playing much more greater power than mainstream media. And that is one of the reasons, I mean, you can follow the blocking of many websites. I mean, when it comes to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, they're blocking anything which is critical to Israel, because they still also control those social media platforms. But nevertheless, I mean, things are coming out.
Yeah, I want to go back to the opening story about, was it 11 September? Osama bin Laden and the narrative around that time. And we also, after 7th October, how it felt like picking up on the same narrative and terminology of war on terror and civilization, war against terror. So it felt like it was a build-up on what have been promoted around the war in Afghanistan and since then. How do you see the journalism have developed from that point? Because we remember also, we were maybe younger, but we remember that after the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, there was a lot of feedback and evaluation and criticism. A lot of journalists also have been losing their credibility for how they helped promote such wars. How do you see the development from that point to now, since they are picking up on the same base of false accusations? Has it got any better, or are we still in the same controlled loop?
It's, I would say it's a huge step. It's really the hugest step I have been witnessing. The differences between journalism 23 years ago, I mean, after 2001, and journalism today. At that time, I was also a journalist based in Denmark. I mean, everybody, even the left-wing media, the right-wing media, all the media was covering that civilization, the global civilization is attacked today. And that's the World Trade Center, the symbol of the world civilization. That was the media writing. What kind of civilization? I mean, it's a World Trade Center, which is the global dominance of the economy. How can you compare that to the global civilization in this building? And that was the journalist at that time. They are not doing that now. Even though, I mean, when talking to journalists now, when I am being interviewed in Denmark about 7th of October, the first question, do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn 7th of October? So you try to answer, and some of them accepts the answer that the war didn't start the 7th of October. The war started 76 years. And what happened 7th October is continuation of the war. It's battles between both partners, the Israeli and the Palestinians. Of course, I do not condemn any resistance. In the start, they started to call people like me as a terrorist or Hamas sympathizers. Now they started to accept that it can be, there are different nuances to this question. So there is a huge change. And therefore, I'm hopeful that the coming time, I mean, we will experience a big change. And therefore, you can see the lobby, the campaigns, I mean, like the Norwegian MIFF, Israel for Fred, they are really launching a huge campaign against mainstream media in Norway and against the LO. the working class in Norway. So that, because they discovered that it's not enough with media from Israel or from pro-Israel friends. We need some internal campaigns to stop the anti-Israel campaigns.
Any other questions in the room? Or we have some online, Pauline?
Can you hear me? Yeah. So one question from the chat. Is it time now to just neglect the traditional media in favor of social media? Especially that people have given us the tools to judge them, unlike traditional media. So I think the question is, should we just boycott traditional media altogether?
I don't think boycotting the traditional media, mainstream media, is the answer. I think the answer is putting pressure on them and reminding them of their holy duty of being objective, of giving voice to the voiceless. Because, I mean, there is still a hope, because they are also people like you and me. They have also some kind of ethical values. So we should keep the pressure on them, but also the pressure on them is by also using the social media to show the lies, to show the fabrications of the mainstream media. Once you show the scandals of the mainstream media on social media, this may result that the mainstream media is pulling back and trying to work as ethical journalists again. No, so I don't think we should boycott the mainstream media.
I just wanted to bring up an example of a strategy that I think is really effective. Pretty early on, a Norwegian musician, rapper, Karpe, he published a list of, I can't remember which newspaper it was, but the editor from a major news outlet in Norway, VG, the biggest newspaper in Norway, and he had cut out the headlines for every single article that she had written about Palestine and Israel. And this created a lot of issues because it was so biased, and there wasn't even any statistics. It was just compiling all the different news headlines and really calling her out for her pro-Israel bias. And it created such a big PR issue for her that she stepped down. So I'm personally more in favor of calling them out, showing the public how biased they are. Because the problem with social media is it's been extremely beneficial in the past few years when it comes to Palestine, no doubt about it. I don't think we would be where we are today if it wasn't for social media. But all the crackdowns that we're seeing now, all the censorship, closing of pages, they've in the new updates, every time there's new restricted functions to make it harder and harder. And everybody, I think, in this room who has posted anything about Palestine has experienced being shadow banned. So we cannot only rely on that as our only strategy, because it's still controlled by the richest people in the world. So I think we need to try and diversify, and calling out the journalists, making it public that they're not doing their jobs properly, protesting in front of it, challenging them. I think that's the way forward. I think I'm just a little bit frustrated that it's again left to all of us, the activists, to do all of this work, where I think it should be the journalists doing that. But yeah, so yeah, I'm sorry, it wasn't really a question. It was more of a comment.
Well, I mean, as I said, I still think there is a duty for the social media activists like you here to put pressure on the mainstream media by also disclosing that this journalist had made this report and it's fake story, fake news. I mean, putting the scandals or the misuse and misinformation out on the air in social media. That might put the pressure on mainstream media to be mainstream media, public broadcasters again.
There's another question from the chat. It's about the representation within Scandinavian media. A lot of people who are getting airtime in the media are not from Palestine or other places where genocide has taken place. A lot of experts, politicians, and others are not even covering or are letting people with this first or second-hand experiences cover the stories themselves. So how much do they fear Palestinian voices within the Norwegian or Scandinavian media outlets?
How many Palestinian voices are heard in?
So the question says that no Palestinian are interviewed in Scandinavian news outlets. So do they fear Palestinian voices?
Yeah. The problem, I mean, if we talk about Norway and NRK, they have a Palestinian correspondent in Israel, and he made some interviews there. And the first thing, actually, he was accused is being anti-Semite, because he was making an interview with an Israeli expert, asking about, let's forget about 7th of October, let's talk about 76 years. And NRK had broadcasted this interview, and NRK was accused of being anti-Semite, allowing anti-Semite, their Palestinian correspondent, I forgot his name, who's stationed in Tel Aviv. So Palestinian voices not only even heard, but they are also in the media, but also as if they try to be objective, they serve Hamas, as the Israeli politicians say. And when it comes to Palestinians in normal, not only journalists, I mean, the first question they ask them, I mean, even in Copenhagen, when they ask Palestinians, do you condemn Hamas? I mean, you cannot start an interview by asking this question, this ultimatum question. Do you condemn Hamas? Do you accept Israel's right to exist? So there's some kind of provoking questions to make Palestinians look silly and stupid and violent. So that's what's happening, actually, at least in Denmark.
Thank you. We have one more question in the room, please.
Hello. I see that most of our problem is related of the ethic of the journalist. If he doesn't be committed to his ethic while he is working, that these problem appear. And we also saw, for example, if doctor break his ethic in work, they judge him. If a lecturer break his ethic in his work, he go to court or in any way they judge him in his work. Else journalist, I didn't in my life, and I am not so much knowledgeable about that I didn't hear that there is a journalist that being asked about why you brought these things in this way, why you broke this ethic. For example, Morgan, a lot of journalists have interviewed and asked stupid questions, and they show them bias, and nobody said to them why, or take them, for example, to court or judge them. That's a way. I think it is any unacceptable action is corrected by law. Why there is no law to correct the action of journalists?
The issue that, I mean, with the journalists and with others is the freedom of speech. It is a holy principle, freedom of speech, freedom of opinion. And when a journalist even says what he or she means, it is part of his or her freedom of expression. So everybody has the right to say anything as long as they don't harm other people. When a journalist is saying his or her meaning about being pro-Israel or anti-Israel, it's in a way is considered as we are asking an expert who should say his or her meaning about this or that. We do not question the expert's analysis because he's more clever than us. He's an expert. We are not experts. So this kind of respect to the decision or analysis or opinion makers, that they are more clever than us and they know much more than us in the given case. So we just accept it and shut up.
Okay, maybe that's when we are discussing about something, but when we are spreading knowledge about action that happened and we are diluting it, like what the example that you brought about cutting head of the children. That's not an opinion. That's a fact, and you are lying when you said you saw something and you didn't, and it didn't happen. That's not related to opinion or to express your freedom of speech.
That's right. I mean, when it comes to the US president who said, I saw pictures, he said, I saw, he didn't say I've heard. He said, I saw pictures of beheaded babies. And it comes out that he didn't see any picture. It was information given to him by Netanyahu office. When it comes to journalists, I mean, she said that soldiers told me about the beheaded babies. But when you hear the information, you forget that soldiers told me. You hear the information, beheaded children. And that is the story which spread throughout the world. And you cannot, I mean, punish her because, I mean, she's quoting journalists. And that is the embedded journalism I'm talking about. That is, I mean, you are a spokesman for an occupying army. You are just giving out military declarations and not examining the information you are giving. Yes.
One more by Baha. Please, yeah.
Hello, thank you. A bit also into what Mansour was talking about. Regarding journalists, are there actually any way where they can get have a penalty or be persecuted for actually giving misinformation? For example, the woman working for the I-24 News who spread the story about the beheading babies, which is a news channel that is obviously spreading propaganda for the Israeli regime. Are there any occurrences in history, or like, is it possible for them to actually be persecuted for spreading misinformation? Yeah.
Unfortunately, no. I mean, journalists are allowed to say whatever they want as long as they don't harm other people, but there are no legislation that will punish a journalist of giving an information. Unfortunately, no. I mean, there are ways that you can raise a case, injuria against the journalist, and it would take some years until he is punished by giving a fee, but never, I mean, a jail or real punishment. No, unfortunately.
As far as I know, there's ethical protocols for certain broadcasting stations or newspapers that they are supposed to follow certain guidelines, including the obligation to not misinform. But of course, at the very end, it's very difficult to prove that because they're basically reproducing where they are taking from out there. One more question from Baha, unless you want to respond back, Krishna.
It was in a way like similar to the 2 points from Christopher and Abdel Khaliq, that there is no way actually to bring back the damage that have been done. And this is what I have been noticing, that for 7 months, they would keep throwing these things here and there. And even if they are encountered with a strong argument at the moment, in these TV shows, it doesn't matter because the damage is done. They just put it out there. So there already people are watching, and let's say they are in the middle, if they are not pro-Israeli, and they would be affected by it, and then they would go on. And this is especially the mind game that is heavily used by Piers Morgan, for example. And given that there's no consequences, I assume it's only back to the power of money and business, which means that if these TV channels are doing this on purpose, these people will be protected. And it's the other way if it's another channel that there's a journalist like, for his name, Mehdi, who challenged the Israeli spokesman, and next day he's fired. So it's back to the ugly reality, I guess, that it's all about money and power. So if you are doing the job, you are kept safe. If you are going out of the line, next day you're out of this job. But I guess maybe we can rely on them losing credibility to the audience. But I think this is not really the time that they care for that yet. But yeah, I just also was wondering if there are any consequences for you throwing a fake propaganda and get away with it, but it doesn't seem like.
So, yeah, I mean, as answered, I mean, there's no way they can just say whatever they want without being punished. And you can only expose them by social media to show that they are lying, they are incredible, they are not saying the right thing, and making scandals. I mean, that's the only way, is launching a counter-offensive against those media workers, journalists who are spreading the fabrication or fake news. Yes.
We have 2 minutes left, so I'm glad to take 1 or 2 more questions if we keep it brief. And I can see a last hand from Anna in the room.
While teaching at university, I have been in situations where, when addressing the situation in Gaza and Palestine, I have been getting comments that your teaching is political or politicized. And my response so far has mostly been saying, but being silent is also a political decision. And I wanted to ask you, do you have any strategies or thoughts on how to kind of work towards a real balance of what is within and outside the realm of politics?
Well, I mean, I would remind of what happened during the apartheid regime in South Africa, that not only journalists and politicians had taken a decision and taken a position that we have to fight, but also ordinary people and students, universities, asking the boycott, academic boycott. I mean, normal, ordinary people are taking decisions to be part of a campaign, be part of a struggle against the South African apartheid regime, which resulted, I mean, in successful moving from apartheid to a democratic country. So this puts some kind of an expectation on you, academia, also to continue working for the academic boycott. And I'm still waiting, actually, because I mean, what started in Colombia, coming to Sorbonne, Copenhagen, I'm still waiting when it will come to Tromsø, the academic movement. So there is an obligation for everyone to move. Not saying, oh, I'm alone, I can't do anything. I mean, what can I change? No, you can change together with others and others. In Vietnam, it started by 3 or 4 students in late 60s, moved to few millions, stopped the war. Colombia started with also 30, 40 students, now millions. So it should only start.
Perhaps these last words, that there's an obligation for everyone, is a good taken from this discussion. And since we are just done with the time, I would like to thank, on behalf of everyone, our speaker and all of you for attending today's seminar.